What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. I don't know why I always say that, but another episode of the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Slim Cliffy. How are we doing today, Cliffy?
Not too bad. A little busy, seeing as we have a massive 12-game slate here tonight. Wrote the article today for the NHL DFS picks, free to read over at Stokastic.com. So between that, researching every single game, it's been a pretty busy day here. But how you been?
Yeah, busy day for me as well. Researching for this slate, I have a MMA betting article going up soon. Just also wanted to give a quick shout out to Jetty in our Discord chat for shipping the $15 NHL last night. He read the Winnipeg Flowchart Manifesto very carefully, and he had a one-off Neil Pionk who got 2 goals at a very low percentage, so congrats to you. 10K on a short slate, not easy to do, especially in NHL. Short slate GPPs are usually pretty crappy, but last night was pretty good. It was actually my best day of the season on the short slate. I played both cash and GPP. I cashed both lineups. Feels pretty good to be in the green. Had a tough start to the season, but that's how it goes with single entry. It's a roller coaster. How'd you do last night?
No, I didn't play much last night. Just pretty much wanted to keep the Iron Man going. Just wasn't a slate that really appealed to me. Made a couple bets. That was, pretty much it. Having done this, I think this is year 6 of me doing DFS shows. Like, eventually you realize you got to kind of pace yourself. It's really easy to get super excited at the start of the season. And if there's a slate that just doesn't appeal to me or something like that, I'll just, keep the Iron Man going and then take the night off and watch a movie or something like that. So took it easy last night, right back at it tonight, though.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wish I did. Like, with you on Sundays, you're harder to find than Jimmy Hoffa. So like you straight up disconnect from all social media, which is nice. Get a nice mental break. But yeah, we have a monster 10-game slate. This show is sponsored by BetMGM. Also, make sure you hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Helps us out a lot. Helps me and Cliffy and you guys bring you free shows, free information, all that fun stuff. And once you hit the make sure you hit the notification bell. You'll know when our shows go live. We have a show after us, so let's hop right into this monster slate, 12 games, lots of big totals. First game of the night, we have the Anaheim Ducks with a 2.8 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.8 total. Bruins kind of reverted back to their lines from the other night. Taylor Hall, David Krejci, David Pastrnak, Zacha, Bergeron, DeBrusk. Now, when they did that the last game, it ended up, Bergeron and Pastrnak ended up together a bunch. It does kind of mess it up from a 5-on-5 stacking, but power play, the Anaheim Ducks penalty kill has been so bad. Gibson has been so bad. It is Gibson and net tonight confirmed. Linus Ullmark for the Bruins. I do like Bruins power play here. The only one who getting big minutes is Pastrnak. So, I think you bring some power play guys along for the ride. On the Ducks side, lots of big road totals. 2.8 going into the Bruins isn't nothing, but I find myself not getting to a lot of Ducks.
Yeah, going into Boston is typically one of those matchups we always avoid. Sometimes it can burn you. There are big games from road teams going into Boston, but that Bergeron matchup is typically a really, really good shutdown matchup for the Bruins. We had concerns that Bergeron might not be as good without Brad Marchand, and I think there's a little bit of merit to that. But the defensive numbers have still been really good for Boston this year. So while I see, really low ownership on that Terry Zegras line from Anaheim, if this is like a 5 or 6 game slate, I think they would warrant, some consideration, at least on a slate this large. I think I'm just passing all the Anaheim forwards by. For me, I think I agree with you. This is about like some sort of power play stack or Boston 2 stack. Now, the reason for that is that Krejci line will see a fair bit of the Ryan Strome, Frank Petrano, Mason McTavish line from Anaheim. Small sample so far to start the year for that second line, but 3 expected goals against per 60 minutes, 3.5 goals allowed. Yeah, those are numbers that are considerably worse than league average. And I don't think it's really a surprise. Like Mason McTavish, like we said on the last show with Anaheim, Frank Petrano's not good defensively. Ryan Strome is a really good playmaker, good on the power play, but not good defensively. Mason McTavish is a rookie with like 13 total games played, including last year or something like that. So that Anaheim 2 line, I think, is one that can be picked on, especially with the way that Anaheim's kind of running their defense. Like they're playing a lot of Cam Fowler and John Klingberg. Fowler's not awful defensively, but Klingsberg defensive play has really fallen off over the last few years. So if you can see if that line, if that Boston second line can see a lot of the second pair of John Klingberg, that's another great matchup as well. So I do like the Boston second line here quite a bit tonight with Taylor Hall, David Krejci, and David Pastrnak. Pastrnak, funny enough, I'll just bring up our ownership here real quick. David Pastrnak coming in over 20% on DraftKings, expected to be the highest owned player, around 20% over on FanDuel here as well. So you're probably going to have a lot of ownership go to that Bruins second line. So maybe that's why the power play stack works. You know what I mean? Maybe you leave Krejci off and put in Bergeron instead, or something like that. One thing I mentioned, we'll get to the defenseman right now. Matt Grzelcyk is back in the lineup for Boston here tonight. He had been out with injury. First game of the season. Grzelcyk at times over the last 2 or 3 years has taken some power play one time with the Bruins. And I don't wonder if he takes over for Hampus Lindholm here tonight, because Lindholm's really not doing a whole lot offensively. He's not doing a whole lot with peripherals. Like, I don't think he's worth his price on DraftKings at 5,100. But Grzelcyk comes into the game Stoneman price on DK at 2,500. And I think there's a reasonable chance he'll get the top power play. At least he'll be power play 2, and he'll probably play, 18, 19 minutes, even if they ease him in. So I think Matt Grzelcyk is probably one of my favorite defense plays on the whole slate. And I wonder if he's going to carry any ownership, because, it was not late news, but it was news we got today at noon that he'd be back in the lineup. So for me, it's, Boston power play stacking on the blue line. I think I like Matt Grzelcyk the most. Connor Clifton's price has really come up, but for the minutes he plays, he's still fine. On the Anaheim side, again, Dmitry Kulikov is probably the only guy that really stands out to me because he's cheap. I think the other guys are too expensive, and it's too tough of a match.
Yeah, I agree on the Duck side. And then with Matt Grzelcyk, I think he's a good risk in GPPs at min price. Even if he doesn't get full power play 1, even if he doesn't take it over, he's still going to see a fair amount of minutes. He's going to get that power play 2 time. So, yeah, I think that's a nice risk in GPPs. Let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Dallas Stars with a 2.9 total heading into Toronto. The Frauds have the Maple Leafs have a 3.7 total. Scott Wedgwood confirmed for the Stars. Ilya Samsonov for the Leafs. Nick Robertson moving up to the second line with Nylander Tavares. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Only thing for me on the Dallas side is probably going to be that top line, but again, they're going to go into the Matthews matchup. On a 12-game slate, the Toronto top line not coming in with massive ownership. It's still pretty high for a 12-gamer, but it's coming down compared to the last few slates. They've been pretty awful. Going up against Scott Wedgwood might be a good bounce back here. Going into Dallas one, they're probably going to see a bunch of that Hintz line. That line is very, very good. So maybe that is why the ownership is down a little bit. But I don't mind some Toronto 2 here at very low ownership.
Yeah, Toronto too was kind of what I had circled here, especially with Nick Robertson coming in for the Leafs. For anybody that might be maybe a little bit newer to the NHL or, just prospects in general, Nick Robertson is probably the Leafs' top prospect and has been for a couple years now. Just, they've typically been pretty deep at forward over the last couple seasons. He's had some injuries. He's also a younger draftee. Like, he's born in September. So he literally just turned 21 years old, even though he was drafted 3 years ago. So, maybe a little bit slower on the development curve, but 30 points in his last 30 AHL games. He's a really good offensive player. And again, he's a guy that's the stone min price over on DraftKings. So it really helps, bring down the cost of that Toronto second line. He's only $3K on FanDuel as well. And we look at their ownership by our top stacks tool. Over on DraftKings, they're coming in, under 2%, obviously just fine. Over on FanDuel, they're coming in roughly the same at about 1%. So they're perfectly acceptable going into that Dallas second line. Seguin and Marchment have played well on that second line, but I wouldn't call them elite defensively. 2.7 expected goals against per 60 minutes in their time together so far this year. So, they're generating a lot offensively. And I think, that's kind of the matchup of this game that's of most interest to me is the two second lines, because both second lines should be pretty good offensively, but they're both kind of porous defensively, right? And I don't think Nick Robertson's going to help that line defensively. If guys like Dennis Mulligan aren't helping defensively, then, or Alex Kerfoot, then certainly Nick Robertson won't. But I think he could help them draw a lot of offense. So, I think this is definitely another one of those spots where if you're using Toronto, you can get a bit weird, especially where Robertson's so cheap. Like maybe you put Nylander with Matthews and Robertson or something like that. Take Tavares out or go double center with Matthews and Tavares. But quite honestly, this seems like a pretty bad matchup for Toronto, especially with the way Jake Ottinger's playing. Like he's had a real good start to his career, was, put in one of the best single series performances we've ever seen from a goaltender. In round one against Calgary last year, and then started this year strong. Like he just looks like he's turning into one of the best goalies in the league. So
Wedgwood's confirmed.
Oh, is he confirmed?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. Well, yeah, that changes quite a bit then. So, I like Toronto too, regardless of who's in net because of the price, but I like them a lot more now that Wedgwood is starting. On the Dallas side, I think I'm out on the Stars here tonight. I'm like the reason to play them is probably because the Leafs goaltending has been real shaky to start the year, which it's been pretty much since Christmas of last year. But I mentioned it in our Discord. Dallas is really spreading out the ice time to start this season. I think Tyler Seguin is the only player or the only forward they have over 17 minutes a game. Maybe it's 18 minutes. Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Joe Pavelski's playing like 15 minutes a game or something like that. They're really spreading out the ice time. A spread out ice time situation in a pretty tough defensive matchup going up against Toronto. I think if anything, one Seguin or one off Marchment would be the direction I would go. But that's it for forward. So Toronto 2, maybe some one-off on the Dallas second lines, and that's about it.
Yeah, Dallas one time on ice is an issue. And also, they're very expensive for a road matchup. They're almost $20K. I'd much rather go to a home team in a better matchup than that. Moving to the blue lines, Morgan Riley, 6,100. Seems pretty expensive for what he does. Rasmus Sandin moving up in the lineup to the second pair. Stillman price is fine for me. On the Star side, really isn't too much. Like they're kind of priced not great. I guess if anything, it would be Suter at 3,400.
Yeah, I think for me it's probably not a game where I get any of my defensemen. I think Heiskanen is still wildly overpriced, especially over on DraftKings. And the rest of the guys just don't really bring a lot. Like you're just praying that you donk and assist. I think the only guy I might play is Justin Hall on DK, hoping you can get the block bonus. But honestly, this isn't a game I'm getting my defenseman from.
Agreed. So let's move on to the toilet bowl. We have the Arizona Coyotes with a 2.9 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 3.6 total. This is a 6.5 over under here. Both teams awful defensively. Both teams very bad on the penalty kill. Not surprising to see that the Montreal top line of Caulfield, Suzuki, Monahan is one of our highest, if not the highest, negatively leveraged line per our top stacks tool. They're coming in around 16%. They're cheap. They're fully correlated. They're in a good matchup. I like them in GPPs. It's just a matter of ownership here. I think if you want to drop down to that third line of Duran, Doc, Anderson, I think that's fine. It's a bummer that Anderson doesn't see any power play time, but I don't mind that line at almost no ownership. That second line, Dvorak, Gallagher, also fine. On the Coyote side, if there's ever a slate to go like Boyd, Keller, this is the one. They have a 2.9 total on the road, getting almost no ownership. So, yeah, on the Coyote side, maybe some of that top line, but I do really like the Habs tonight.
Yeah, I think one of the shows we did with Arizona, we said eventually we're going to use that top line. And I'm wondering if this isn't the matchup to use that Arizona top line. They'll see a fair bit of the Montreal top line as the in-game matchup here tonight. And, we talk often about how Montreal has really turned around their offense since Martin St. Louis was hired as coach back in February. But the defense, like you mentioned at the start of this segment, still real bad. This season alone, the top line for the Habs, 3.7 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Like, that is pretty bad. 4.8 actual goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. It's Jake Allen and even, Sam Montembeault at times that has really made this team look better defensively than they've been. So I don't know exactly how I would approach stacking the Arizona top line. Like, obviously you get Keller in there. I don't know if I would 3-man stack them outright, but I think Keller makes a fine one-off here tonight because, it's either him or Nick Ritchie up front, because Nick Ritchie does get some power play one time in Montreal's penalty kill. Just like after Martin St. Louis was hired last year, it's still real bad here to start this season. The only thing I will mention is, like I said, the goaltending has saved them. They have .957 save percentage on the penalty kill so far this year, which is just absolutely insane. That's obviously going to come down quite a bit. So, I definitely do like one-off Keller, one-off Nick Ritchie here in this game, especially where Ritchie's price is so cheap across the industry and, just 3,100 over on DraftKings. He doesn't need a whole lot to reach value. If he gets a goal, like, you're absolutely rolling. So I do like Ritchie and Keller as one-offs for Arizona. I just don't know if I would full stack any line. On the Montreal side, it's like, yes, this is a good matchup for the Montreal top line in return. Arizona won without Nick Schmaltz, 4.0 expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 over the last 2 seasons. So still giving up a ton of expected goals, whether Schmaltz is there or not, but not having him makes them considerably worse. So it is a great matchup for Montreal. It's just that there is a ton of ownership, like 15% ownership and above for this line on a 12-game slate featuring 24 teams. Like, that's a lot. So I think they do stand a pretty good chance of doing well here tonight. It's just there are so many other lines that are also in very good spots that you could use. I don't think they wouldn't be my single entry line here tonight. If you're 20 maxing 150 or something like that, certainly. But they are in a great matchup. I think for the depth, I'd rather go to the Dvorak and Gallagher line. They've actually been playing reasonably well under Martin St. Louis. 2.5 expected goals for, 2.9 expected goals against. That's actually good considering Montreal. One off Brendan Gallagher, something like that, I think would be fine on the Habs side. But that's probably it. Like I said, I do like the Habs top line. It's just they have a lot of ownership. I would probably avoid them in single entry.
Yeah, I agree there. And if you do use them in single entry, just be aware you're probably playing the chalkiest line of the night. Moving to the blue line, on the Arizona side, JJ Moser on the top power play, 3,500 is nice, but Shane Gostisbehere also on the top power play, 5,900 on DK, cheaper on FanDuel. I think I'd play Gostisbehere more on FanDuel, but I still think he's a fine play on DraftKings tonight. On the Montreal side, their defensemen are starting to get priced up here. I don't know if there's one that I would just put into my lineup as the last guy. If I had 3,700, maybe Caden Goulet. but I think there's some better options in that range.
Yeah. Shane Gostisbehere, I wrote up in the DFS picks article over at Stokastic.com, free to read. Just head on over to our NHL DFS section. After St. Louis was hard last year, the Montreal penalty kill was 31st in expected goals against and 27th in actual goals against. This year, 30th in expected goals against. The penalty kill still just real bad. So I agree with you. Gostisbehere, especially over on FanDuel, but still a solid value over on DK. This probably isn't a game where I'm looking for my punts. I think Jonathan Kovacevic, could get there. Stone Min for Montreal, but I'm probably, with guys like Matt Grzelcyk existing at the Stone Min, I think there are other spots to look for a cheap defenseman.
Yeah, I agree. And as much as I want to give you another epic hardwood promo, I want to make sure that we can get the last 9 games in. So let me just get through these reads pretty quickly here. $10 for 10 days of Stokastic Platinum. NBA is back, and that means it's time for our best promo of the year. Get full access to all of our data, tools for every sport: NBA, NHL, NFL, PGA, soccer, esports, everything we got, as well as the new lineup generator, which allows you to build and export up to 20 lineups using our data. That's 80% off our normal platinum pricing, and you get access to the lineup generator. Use promo code Hardwood or click the link in the description to sign up. The generator is awesome. We have it for NFL. We have it for NBA. I think it's coming with NHL, so just be aware of that. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Washington Capitals going into Ottawa. Capitals have a 3.2 total. The Senators have a 3.4. One thing that I noticed here on the Senators, not a lot of I just said puberty. Not a lot of ownership on them. 2.5% for that top line, a little bit lower for that. Josh Norris is the most expensive, or not the most expensive, the highest owned, because he is 3,900 power play 1. He's coming in at 5%. I kind of have a lot of interest in the Senators at the ownership. Like, I'd much rather play them than 17% Habs. On the Capital side, again, not a huge fan of full stacking. I will say power play stacking is probably how I would attack the Capitals tonight. I'd do something like Ovechkin, Strome, Oshie, or something like that. But I don't know if I'd full stack any line at even strength.
Yeah, my concern with Washington is that they move around some players through the day, right? Is Evgeny Kuznetsov and Connor Brown both out for this game. So Lars Eller playing on the top line with Alex Ovechkin. Could we see Marcus Johansson maybe even slide to center at some point? That's something I think that could happen. Does Dylan Strome move up to go play with Ovechkin at some point? So, Ovechkin always certainly in play as a one-off. I just worry about full stacking them. When Lars Eller and Alex Ovechkin play together, it's actually pretty good for Ovechkin's defensive numbers. 51 to 52% of the expected goal share, around 2.7 expected goals against. That's a little bit below average, but they generate a lot offensively as well. So maybe it's a little bit of a tougher matchup for the Ottawa top line. I don't think that I want to go into that Washington second line, though. Alexei Protas has, believe it or not, has played pretty well for Washington this year. TJ Oshie, always a good two-way winger. So I worry about that second line for Washington being tough defensively for Ottawa. So I do like the prices on both of Ottawa's lines, though. It's weird. Like, their prices come down and nobody wants to play them, it seems, even though Washington's looked awful defensively to start the season. So I think either of Ottawa's top two lines are perfectly acceptable to use here tonight. I'm not going to worry. We just talked about line matching. I'm not going to worry about it too much because I do think Washington ends up moving their lines a fair bit in this game. So I would probably just go to the Brinkat and Giroux line, coming in with very little ownership, coming in at a very reasonable price on DraftKings at about 16.4. Should get some good matchups, whether it's top line against Ovechkin or down to the third line with Connor McMichael making his season's debut. So I really do like the Ottawa, the Brinkat, Giroux, Norris line in this game, especially where Their prices have come down, and they've been playing really, really well to start this year. 4.5 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, 3.4 actual goals scored. Those are really, really good offensive numbers. Alex DeBrincat has 15 shots in 3 games. The guy's averaging 5 shots a game pretty early in the season, and the whole line's prices come down. So it's the DeBrincat Giroux line for me that I like the most in this game. Again, if you want to one-off Alex Ovechkin, that is always fine to do. But I'm not really too gung-ho on the way they've set up their lines, because it looks, Anthony Mantha on the third line, TJ Oshie on the second line, Alex Ovechkin on the top line. Like, they just really spread everything around. So if I were to do anything from the Caps, it'd be some sort of power play stack, maybe. But then you're taking guys across 3 lines. So I think it's just one-offing Ovechkin, or maybe one-offing a relatively cheap TJ Oshie down on the second line with Dylan Strome. But that's it for Washington forwards.
Yeah, I agree with that. On the blue line, Chabot priced up still. He's had a weird start to the season, but don't mind it for special teams. The guys I'm looking at are Jake Sanderson or my son Artem Zub. On the Capital side, Carlson for power play stacks. After that, I don't know if I would punt anybody.
Yeah, Dmitry Orlov has been moved to the top pair with John Carlson, so maybe Orlov sees a few more minutes here tonight. I don't think his price is that bad on DraftKings, and on FanDuel is pretty reasonable as well. So I think Dmitry Orlov, if you want like one of those lower mid-price players, but really not a game where I'm grabbing my defenseman from.
Yep, I agree. I see we have a $100 super chat from Jetty. I would say thank you, but that is the cost of renting the manifesto for a night. So if anyone wants to rent the Winnipeg flowchart, just get at us in Discord, $100. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very, very much. Only 9,900 profit now. How bad do I run? Thanks, boys. Appreciate y'all. Incredible night from you. Great night. I appreciate the super chat a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jetty. Hopefully another 10K on the way here in the next couple nights. Let's see what we can do about that.
So let's move on to the next game of the night. The San Jose Sharks, with maybe the best reverse retro jerseys. They're very nice. With a 2.4 total heading into New York. My Rangers, 3.7 total. James Reimer confirmed. Igor Shesterkin probable. Rangers top line, heavy ownership. Rangers second line, heavy ownership. And by heavy, I mean double digits. To be expected. They're still very, very good on the power play. Their 5-on-5 play has been much improved in the small sample over last year. I think, Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere really helping that top 6 5-on-5. And Trocheck over Strome obviously is a big benefactor as well. I like the Rangers tonight. I think I heard a lot of rumblings about power play stacking, and I think that's fine. They're very good on power play. Somehow the only thing the Sharks are good at is penalty killing. So I think I would, just full stack that top line. I think add in a Capo Caco, or full stack the second line and add in, the Lafreniere. On the Sharks side, if it is Igor net, I don't know if I'll get to any Sharks. Like if I was 150 maxing, maybe I'll have a little bit of the Hertelmeyer 2-man, but that's really about it.
Yeah, I was kind of tempted to maybe play a little bit of Sharks here tonight because, that Rangers top line with Kako has been very good. 4.8 expected goals generated per 60 so far this year, 2.9 expected goals against. Not really great defensive numbers. But then you're running into Igor Shesterkin. And, if I have the option of not playing a line going against Igor Shesterkin on a 24-team slate, I'll usually take it. Alexander Barabanov being back is interesting here because that top line with Barabanov was really good last year. 3.7 goals scored per 60 minutes. He's cheap, obviously, but he's also just coming back from injury. So, what kind of game shape is he in? Is he going to play very much? Are they going to move him around? That's just kind of the issue here. When you have those questions and you're going into Igor Shesterkin, I think it's easy to pass. So I'm passing on San Jose here tonight, though. I don't think the top line is necessarily in a bad spot. I think they're in a fine spot. So if I was playing 150, like you said, I would definitely have some Sharks here, but not here tonight. The matchup I really like is the Rangers second line. The problem is they're coming in with a ton of ownership. We talk about it, every time the Sharks are on a slate. Once the top line gets off the ice, this team just gets ran over. Going back to last year, 2.1 expected goals for, 2.6 expected goals against without the top line on the ice. Like, doesn't matter what line they put out, they just get throttled. Now, Nick Bonino playing with Logan Couture might help a little bit defensively. Bonino. But, wouldn't help them offensively. And the Rangers' second line has just been absolutely rolling to start this year. So I think this might be an instance where I would power play stack. The Sharks I don't think they've allowed a goal on the penalty kill yet this year, but they're allowing a ton of expected goals against. So it's just a matter of the goaltending eventually letting them down. And the Rangers, obviously, their power play, arguably the best in hockey. So I think this is definitely a case where, if you are worried about ownership, take out Trocheck, put in Zibanejad, do a Zibanejad, Panarin, Adam Fox kind of stack. I think that's kind of the way that I would attack the Rangers. I wouldn't just 3-man stack and even strength line. I would definitely power play stack the Rangers here using, Adam Fox. Maybe you can throw in a Kako as a fourth forward or something like that. But that's the direction I would go tonight with the Rangers. Just expect a lot of ownership.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. Like, I think you can even do if you do like that top line a bit better, leave off Kako, add in, Panarin, just because Panarin's always involved on the power play. I don't mind full stacking. I think you can. I think it'll lower the ownership of the 3-man a bit here. Moving to the blue line on the Rangers side, Jacob Trouba priced up. He's only $200 less than Adam Fox, who is $6,300 on DK. I think, if you're using the Rangers, Adam Fox is the guy you want to add into your stacks. If you want to punt, I think K'Andre Miller is fine. I think Trouba is fine as a one-off. He is expensive, though, so maybe even just pay up for Fox at that point. On the Sharks side, Mario Ferraro, under 2,900, does PK, could block a bunch of shots. Under 3K is where I like him because he doesn't shoot too much. Other than that, on the Sharks side, not too interesting for me.
Yeah, this expensive defensemen don't overly entice me in this game, so I will say it is the cheap guys. Mario Ferraro could easily rack up the block bonus just on the penalty kill here tonight for San Jose. So don't mind him on DraftKings. K'Andre Miller seems to be shooting a little bit more this year, and this is a great matchup for him to get involved offensively. So K'Andre Miller, one of my favorite defensemen under 3K here tonight.
Agreed. He's not going to be there all season. I wouldn't be surprised by the middle or late season. He'll be high fours if his offense starts showing up. Let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Los Angeles Kings with a 2.8 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 3.8 total. Tristan Jarry is confirmed. Calvin Peterson expected. No changes for the Kings. Same lines as well for the Penguins. Penguins top line not getting a lot of ownership. I think I'd much rather play the Penguins top line than the Maple Leafs top line tonight. They're in similar price points, and you're getting a bigger discount on ownership. I like the Kopitar Kempe Fiala line offensively, but Kopitar hasn't been exactly the best defensively the past few seasons. I think this is a decent bounce back spot. Crosby, Gensel were pretty bad in their last game. Maybe that's why ownership is down a little bit. You want to go to that second line, Malkin Rust. I guess that's fine. I don't like really going into Dano more Arvidsson. I think I would prefer Kings 2 in that spot.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I did write up Evgeny Malkin for our Power Plays article today. The way Pittsburgh does their line matching, their top 6 basically goes out against the other team's top 6. They don't hard match lines, but you will see Crosby against Kopitar and Crosby against Dano and the Malkin against Kopitar, et cetera, et cetera. The Kings' top 6 hasn't been very good defensively. As you mentioned, Anze Kopitar's defensive play, he's starting to get fairly, I say fairly old. I'm pretty sure he's still younger than me. But the defensive play has been sliding a little bit. And so far this year, that top line, 3.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes. I think that's a full goal worse than the league average or thereabouts. They've really, really struggled defensively so far this year. 4.1 actual goals against per 60 minutes. And that Kings second line, we talked about them every time the Kings played last season. But, they were a high event line, which means they would allow some shots in return. So far this season, they're not generating a lot offensively, and they're still giving up a lot defensively. 3.6 expected goals against per 60 minutes so far this year, even worse than the Kings top line. I think this is just me spitballing here. I think Victor Arvidsson's injured. He came into the season hurt, missed a lot of training camp. He missed one game. They said it was for an illness, I think, but I don't trust the coach that won't even give us what goalie he's starting. And Arvidsson's shot rate has just plummeted. So it wouldn't surprise me if Arvidsson's playing a little dinged up here. I like the entire Pittsburgh top six. I'll be honest. I think the Pittsburgh top line is fairly expensive over on DraftKings. That's kind of my only issue, is that they're coming in over $20,000 if you want to 3-man stack them. FanDuel's pricing, roughly in the same range. But it's a great matchup for both the Pittsburgh top two lines. I put in Malkin in the Power Plays article because when him and Russ play together, they're just absolutely dynamite. So far this year, 7.2 expected goals generated per 60 minutes. Like, that's just absolutely absurd. And Russ certainly makes Malkin a lot better, believe it or not. So I might dip down to Pittsburgh too here, but it would be more of a price thing than anything. It's certainly not the matchup. I like the matchups for both Pittsburgh's top lines here. I think it would just be a pricing thing for me that would get me to Malkin and Rust.
Yeah, and Malkin has been very good on the power play. Kings penalty killed pretty bad last season. Don't think they're off to the best start either this year. On the blue line, on the Kings side, like, Doughty's just super cheap at 4,600. If you're doing anything with Kings 1, he would probably be the guy. If not, Sean Dursey at 3,300 playing big minutes does interest me a lot. On the Penguin side, it's probably just Letang or bust. Maybe Marcus Pettersson at 2,800, but probably just Letang.
I mean, I don't mind Jeff Petrie. His peripherals do look reasonably solid. Don't mind Petrie here tonight. He's a little bit more expensive over on DraftKings, over on FanDuel, more than acceptable at 4,900. Sean Dursey, playing a lot of minutes. Don't mind him for cheap on DK, but I agree with you. I think this is a spot where I'm just correlating a defenseman or looking elsewhere.
Yipperoni. As I mentioned at the top, we're sponsored by BetMGM. Bet $10, win $200 if any team scores a goal tonight. I'm pretty much guaranteeing that a team's going to score a goal tonight. It's free money from the sports book. Take it while you can, because it doesn't happen often. It has to be first-time BetMGM users, and it has to be money line bets only. If you're already signed up, find someone to sign up and take a percentage. Nice little side hustle. Send them a couple bucks and do that. So, easy way to 20 extra money there. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Nashville Predators with a 3.5 total heading into Columbus. The Jackets have a 3 total. Would be shocked if it wasn't UC Saros. Elvis Merzlikins is confirmed for the Jackets. Kent Johnson moving up with Cole Sillinger on the second line. Third line is now Danforth, Roslovic, Yegor Chinakhov. Same lines for the Predators. Fully correlated top line for the Jackets, getting, 6-7% ownership tonight. They're pretty expensive. Nashville does have a pretty bad PK. Jackets do have a 3 total. Don't mind them. I don't really like Gustav Nyquist. I wish, someone would move up into that spot and take his power play spot, but beggars can't be choosers. He's 4K. Don't mind that line. I do like the Nashville top line. The problem for me is their ownership. They're double digits. They're on the road. They're fairly expensive. This is a great matchup, but, there is a lot of big totals on this slate, and if I'm going to pay double-digit ownership for a big total, I want it to be on a home team in a better matchup.
Yeah, I didn't write about Nashville in my Power Plays article specifically because without Patrick Laine on that top line, they are a lot better defensively with Gustav Nyquist there instead. And Gaudreau and Boone Jenner have been pretty good together to start this year. 60 minutes together, 3.2 expected goals for, 2.3 expected goals against, which 2.3 expected goals against is around league average, and it feels like a miracle on this Columbus team. You know what I mean? So, I think with all the ownership that we're seeing on the Nashville top line, I think this is one of those spots where I would avoid the over leveraged team. So I'm out on the Nashville top line here today. I don't mind the Columbus top line either. Like I said, Gaudreau and Jenner have played pretty well together, even if they're not racking up monster point totals. Nyquist makes it cheap, especially over on DK, where he's only 4,000. They're not coming in with very much ownership. Nashville did take a lot of penalties last year. Whether they're still going to do that this year, who knows? But they were a heavily penalized team last year. And yeah, bad penalty kill, bottom 5 by expected goals against on the PK so far this year in the league. They really need UC Stars to hold the fort down. So I think the Columbus top line is, amongst the early games, one of my favorite lines. Probably up there with, obviously we like the Rangers and obviously we like Montreal, but I'd put them up there with like Pittsburgh or Boston 2 or something like that. So do like the Columbus top line in this matchup. Probably leave the rest of the Columbus depth aside. On the Nashville side, I think Eeli Tolvanen, now that he's on that line with Ryan Johansson, makes he can be a decent punt on DK, but too expensive on FanDuel. So just Columbus one for me, really.
Yeah, I don't mind the two-man Nita rider, Eeli Tolvanen, just because I can't imagine Ken Johnson, Cole Sillinger, and Jacob Voracek being very good defensively. They're only 5,800 for the two of them. I don't mind working that into your MME mix. On the blue lines, Roman Josi, 7,800, big ownership, but I think, he's a guy that if you have the salary, you play. Zach Werenski, same deal. He plays monster minutes now. He's putting up points as well. Don't mind Peak or Gavrikov as punts. They're getting a little pricey. Obviously, Nick Blankenberg, 2,600. I know a bunch of guys in our Discord were like, why is Fantasy Cruncher giving me so much Blankenberg? And then he had a fairly big game for his price. I think he's a prospect that the Blue Jackets like. So at his price, I don't mind it. On the, besides Yossi on the Predator side, maybe Ryan McDonough at 3,400. That's a price I can handle, Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, I think Ryan McDonough is the only guy that I'm really considering playing. Obviously Roman Josi, he's in play every time. But Ryan McDonough, 3,400, blocking a fair bit, playing a fair bit. Don't mind him on DraftKings here tonight.
Let's move on to the next one. We have the New Jersey Devils with a 2.9 total heading into Long Island, a miserable experience. The Islanders have a 3.5 total. Goalies aren't confirmed here. I would imagine it's going to be Sorokin. Don't know if it's going to be Blackwood. Devils goaltending has been putrid to start the season. I know this has a 6.5 over under. I find myself not really getting too much here. I don't like how the Devils keep flip-flopping Bratt around. He's with Heischer, he's with Hughes, he's with Heischer, he's with Hughes, and then he's down with on the fifth line in the press spot. They're just playing with Hughes, giving the minutes. Lindy Ruff is one of my least favorite coaches for DFS. On the Islanders side, I don't know. Hughes, Sharangovich, Mercer seems pretty decent defensively. Heischer, Bratt, Palat, pretty good defensively. If anything, I think Sorokin's my favorite play from this game.
Yeah, I will say Sorokin's one of the goalies that I absolutely circled in this one. The one thing that kind of bothered, I don't mind playing Barzal, generally speaking, especially now that they finally moved Zach Parise off his line. Barzal and Palmieri both play the power play together. They both get depth matchups. Barzal plays a lot against third and fourth lines when the Islanders are at home. Now, the Islanders are coming in with that Islanders line's coming in with reasonable ownership, certainly over leveraged. So I don't know if I would run out to play them, but I do like the spot that Barzal and Palmieri in. And I like that Beauvillier is on that line over Zach Parise. Would rather see Oliver Wahlstrom, but baby steps here, babe. As for the rest of the Islanders, I don't mind that Nelson Lee Wahlstrom trio. For me, they're just a little bit, especially over on FanDuel, they just seem a little bit too expensive. They're 17,300 on FanDuel. That's more expensive than the Columbus top line. And, Wahlstrom might play, I think he played 14 minutes last game, but check his game logs last couple of years. There are a lot of 9, 10, 11-minute games from him. So At least over on FanDuel, I think you can avoid that Nelson line from the Islanders. Over on DK, where the price is, a little bit more reasonable, I think you can use them. But I really do like Barzal and Palmieri here in this matchup going against the third and fourth lines from the Devils. On the Devils side, like Hischier and Bratt playing together is really, really enticing for me because those guys have been absolutely dynamite over the last couple of years. 4.1 goals generated per 60 minutes in their ice time together. Like that is a lot of ice time. And there's no ownership coming in on the Devils. We're talking under 1%. I don't know if this is a spot where I would go for a 1% owned line. I don't like doing that going into Ilya Sorokin, especially where the Islanders, they have looked better than they did last year. That's for sure. So I think if I'm playing like 120 max or 150, I'm definitely considering Brad and Hischier in this matchup. Single entry, I don't think you have to take them at 0.5%. I think there are other spots to go. So I think it's Barzal and Palmieri that I like best in this game.
Yeah, I always like Barzal. I get so frustrated with the Islanders, especially in like empty net scenarios. Matt Martin, Casey Zizekas, Cal Clutterbuck, always out with the empty net. I want to throw myself down a metal flight of stairs when that happens. Anyway, enough about me. Let's move to the blue line. Dougie Hamilton, 7K. I think like he's priced below Yossi, above Werenski. He's kind of in no man's land in terms of that. I think I'd rather play Werenski or Yossi, but if you do have some double stacks, don't mind Hamilton. Same with Noah Dobson. I think he's a little bit below Werenski. I think you can one-off him. You can play him with Barzal. In terms of punts, Romanoff up to 4K because he just blocks everything his way. I think he's okay. I wish he was still a little bit cheaper. On the Devils side, Graves or Severson if I'm not using Dougie.
Yeah, one of the punts I do like today is John Marino as well from the Devils. He's been playing more. I think his ice time has gone up every game with New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, up to over 23 minutes in his last game. So 23 minutes to 2,600. Don't mind him as a super cheap punt.
So let's move on to the next game. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.9 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3.7 total. Jordan Greenway back. Marco Rossi playing with Boldy. Hartman back between Kaprizov and Zuccarello. Tyson Yost yeeted to the fourth line. Thank God. On the Canucks side, Soup up with JT Miller and Connor Garland. That's Ilya Mikheyev. Second line of Podkolzin, Pedersen, Kuzmenko. Third line of Pearson, Horvat, Brock, Besser. Now, Greenway, Eriksson Ek, Foligno, one of the most elite defensive lines out there. I would imagine they're going to see the JT Miller line. Also wouldn't surprise me to see them go out a little bit against Pedersen, but I think it's going to be the Miller line, so that takes the Miller line out for me. Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, probably going to get, bottom six matchups. So, I really like Minnesota one here. The ownership's not too bad. Hartman is on power play too, and that kind of sucks. If you want to leave Hartman off, add an Eriksson Ek for some power play, that's fine. Canucks have been an adventure, to say the least, defensively. So I really like the Wild tonight. I don't think we should sleep on the Canucks either. They do have a 2.9 total with very low ownership.
Yeah. I mentioned in the power play article over at Stokastic.com that, with Ryan Hartman there, that line was amazing last year. 4.5 goals generated per 60 minutes. They did give up some goals against. This year it's been worse because of the goaltending, but Minnesota is going to see a lot of that Bo Horvat line, I think, from Vancouver. And, Horvat and Besser have typically been pretty bad together. Again, from the same article, only 46% of the expected goal share since being put together last year after Bruce Boudreau was hired. So they're not a very good line. I think the Minnesota top line really controls the play. They're one of my favorite top lines on the slate here today. I would be considering them alongside, Pittsburgh one. We'll get to Edmonton in a second. Certainly the Rangers top line. So do like Minnesota one here. As far as the second and third lines go, I'm not playing the Eriksson Ek line. I wouldn't full stack them. I'm worried about that Rossi, Boldy, Goodrow line because the numbers still haven't been great. We were worried with Kevin Fiala gone that they wouldn't be that good, and they still haven't been super strong. Boldy, he's shooting and getting power play time, but the rest of the line isn't playing well. Marco Rossi could be off that line by the end of the first period. So it's Minnesota one or nothing for me. On the Vancouver side, I do like that they put Kuzmenko back with Pettersson. The problem is Kuzmenko has been kicked off the power play in each of the last 2 games in favor of Brock Besser. So, if Kuzmenko's only playing half the power plays and it's on the road, like you said, they might see some of that Joel Eriksson-Ek line. Like, I don't mind Pettersson Kuzmenko 2-man here tonight. Assuming they miss a fair amount of that top line or of that shutdown line for Minnesota, sorry. But they're still pretty expensive. So, I think there are other expensive spots I'd rather go to. So it's Minnesota 1 for me or nothing here.
Yeah, on the blue lines, not much from the Vancouver side. Don't mind Tyler Myers at 2,600. Quinn Hughes, if you are doing anything with the power play. Minnesota goaltending has been awful so far this year. On the Wild side, Kalen Addison, power play quarterback for 3K. I like Jacob Middleton if you're punting. Jonas Brodin also 3,500.
Yeah, Kalen Addison is the guy that really jumps out to me. Honestly, there's not a defenseman that I really want to play in this game, except for Addison, maybe in some Minnesota 1 lineups. That's about it.
Don't forget to check out the Hardwood promo. Link is in the description, or use promo code Hardwood. 10 days of Stokastic Platinum for just $10. Every sport and the all-new lineup generator. We have about 7 minutes left, 3 games to get through, so let's rock and roll. I'm such a dad. Carolina Hurricanes 3.2 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 3.3. Carolina on the end of a very long road trip. It's nice to get it out of the way beginning of the season, but doesn't bode well for DFS. Oilers, fairly low owned Oilers, always makes me nervous. This is a tough matchup. Carolina has an excellent penalty kill. They're fairly good defensively, 5-on-5. McDavid's the most expensive center on the board, most expensive player on the board. I think if anything, I know it sucks to leave McDavid off a stack in Edmonton, but I don't mind the Draisaitl, Hyman, Nugent, Hopkins line. It's double center. So if you want to add in, McDavid, you're hampering all 3 center spots on DraftKings, but don't mind that second line. On the Oilers side, on the Hurricane side, 3.2 total. The problem is here, ice time has been an issue. It's very even. The power play has been mixed up a little bit. So Svechnikov, Netchus on the top power play, Jarvis, Teravainen to the second unit. So it's kind of tough to full stack a line here, but I don't mind, doing a Aho, Svechnikov or something like that.
Yeah, I don't mind a power play stack here from Carolina at all. Edmonton's penalty kill has definitely not been good, basically since Jay Woodcroft took over. One thing I want to mention about the ice time is the ice time usually gets depressed, but over the last couple seasons, when Carolina's playing Edmonton, Aho's averaged 20 minutes a game. When he's playing elite top centers like McDavid, he tends to play a lot. They don't want Kotkaniemi caught out there against McDavid tonight, right? So I think this actually might be a game to go to Carolina 1. Aho, Teravainen, and Jarvis, absolutely no ownership. The split power play really does suck. The wingers are on a different power play from Aho. So if you want to leave Teravainen off and then throw Svechnikov on or throw Natchez on or something like that instead, I think that's perfectly fine. But that Carolina top line has been absolutely dynamite so far this season. Wrote about them again in the power play article. 3.8 expected goals generated so far this year at 5-on-5. Last year was 3.7 when they played together. So they're just continuing what they did a year ago. Honestly, Carolina 1 is one of my favorite top lines here on the slate, considering ownership and projection. And I think they could end up playing more minutes than we expect. So Carolina, obviously, you want to play Edmonton, go ahead. But with the elite Carolina penalty kill and how reliant Edmonton can be on the power play, I think this is a game where you can leave them alone. I kind of like Carolina 1 most out of everything from the forwards here.
Yeah, they're very low owned tonight. And they have, I think, the highest road total, which is nice. On the blue line, Brent Burns, 5,700, interested there. On the Edmonton side, it's probably Nurse or bust for me.
Yeah, I mean, Edmonton's giving Tyson Barrie a ton of minutes and giving nothing to Devin Bouchard. So nothing for me. Cody Ceci, again, on FanDuel, I think is fine. 3,900, probably plays 22, 23 minutes, whatever.
Yep. Buffalo Sabres, 2.5 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 4 total, biggest of the night. Love Flames 1. Don't love their ownership. Double digits, pretty high here. Sabres have been an absolute festival defensively. I kind of like Buffalo 1, but this is a miserable matchup. So, yeah, Calgary 1 for me.
Yeah, I like Buffalo 1 as well, but they're coming in, roughly the same ownership as like the Dallas top line, and I think I'd rather play the Dallas top line.
Expensive too.
Yeah, over 18K on DraftKings. They're coming in with the same ownership as the Carolina top line that we just talked about. I'd way rather play the Carolina top line. So I'm out on Buffalo. If anything for me, for Calgary, it's probably some pieces from the second line. They've been very, very good so far this year, 4.4 expected goals generated. And speaking of low ice time, Mangiapane and Dylan Dubé are playing as much per game as Jonathan Huberdeau and Tyler Toffoli. That's another problem with Calgary is, they really spread out the ice time, and they're coming in with a ton of ownership on DraftKings. No problem with it, especially where Buffalo has a bad penalty kill to start this year. So if you want to stack the top line, especially, I like Rasmus Andersson on the blue line as well. Perfectly acceptable. But I do like, Kadri, I like a Kadri Mangiapane 2-man or something like that here tonight. That's kind of what I like here the most in this game.
Yep. Let's quickly get to the last game. Winnipeg Jets, 2.8 total. Vegas has a 3.9. Winnipeg back-to-back on the road, so it's probably going to be Dave Riddick, which is a big step down from Hellebuck. Aiden Hill, probable for the Knights. I do really like the Vegas top line. Don't love their power play correlation, but I do really like Eichel at 6,100 tonight. If you want to, do like a power play stack, I think that's fine. I just don't really like their lines 5-on-5. So if anything, I'd power play stack, but I'd have to have Eichel in there.
Yeah, it's Eichel and Riley Smith that I like the most. I wrote about Riley Smith in their write-ups. Cheap price. Eichel's price has come down since the start of the year. They've been great together. 3.4 expected goals generated per 60 minutes. They're going to see probably a fair bit of the second and third lines from Winnipeg. And not only that, but Winnipeg Connor Hellebuck started last night for Winnipeg. So it's going to be the backup almost certainly in net in David Riddick here tonight. Vegas 1, I think their ownership is just fine. Fairly cheap. I do like Vegas 1 here. On the Winnipeg side with Nick Ehlers out, I'm off them. Aiden Hill starting might kind of change things a little bit. Especially, where Kyle Connor might play like 22 minutes or something like that. But it does seem to be a tough matchup. They aren't that cheap. So probably out on Winnipeg entirely.
Yep. Coming up right after us at 3:00, the No House Advantage Thursday night football show with Pete and Jeff. We have to get out of here, but real quickly, we'll do a quick hat trick pick. My hat trick pick is going to be Kirill Kaprizov.
I got Sebastian Aho. Let's go, baby.
And so for Cliffy, our producer, Slim Cliffy, I'm your host, Josh Harris. We'll be back, I believe, Saturday morning at 9 a.m. with some energy drinks. So good luck tonight. We'll see you in Discord.
Good luck, everyone.